Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Adventures in Careerland. And we are very happy for our 13th edition. This is the 13th episode to have, of course, our able team, which is Isabella Suarez. She is our producer, and she's a student in the broadcast media program at the Riel Arts and Tech Center, one of the gems in this building. At the Arts and Tech Center, 13 programs in which you can learn applied skills that will turn you into a powerhouse when you leave and look for work. That's what the ATC offers. But nothing does it better than the broadcast media program. And we usually have Lily Chen, who is our other producer, but she's not feeling well today. So we will journey on in her absence, and she's always here in spirit and heart anyway. So we are ready to go. And our guest today is one of those, well, we got the big hitter today. We got the guy. This is one of the key players in the city of Winnipeg. Or that's what he told me before we got on. This is Loren Remillard. He's the president and CEO of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. So Loren, how are you?
I am doing well, Adriano. Great to be here. Isabella, nice to meet you. Looking forward to our conversation. And I'll just start by saying I apologize for the disheveled look, the cap. As you know, of course, haircuts have not been permitted for quite a while, and I have curly hair. And let's just say, for the sake of not scaring anyone, I'm wearing the hat.
Yeah, you're wearing the hat. I like the hat. You look a bit like Opie from the Andy Griffith show, but and that's a black and white show, everybody. Isabella, that's a black and white show that really tested our sensibilities of just morality, beauty, and living family values. And that's what you look like today. You look like you're a family man today because you're in your basement.
I am.
And of course,
my sanctuary.
Now the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. Now Isabella is one of our key producers. She's a Gen Z. Isabella, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you all doing?
Okay. Now we're always happy to do this podcast because this is a podcast about the student experience. So people might be wondering, what do you have Remillard on for? This guy's no student. This guy's on the verge of walking with a cane, and this is. Why Remillard? And I said, well, it's okay to have the players in this town because they also had a student experience. So when we talk to you on this podcast, Loren, it's about students. It's about their student experience. We know that you are a high-powered businessman, but at some point, you were in my class back in the mid-'80s as a fledgling student looking for purpose, trying to figure out how to make your way in the world. And I have to say, as your former teacher, how proud I am of you. That's an aside. But what are you doing? When it comes back to the 80s, and you were in one of my first classes, when you were looking back at that time and thinking about life, what would it lead to? What was going through your head? If you were in a grade 9, 10, 11 class, what was going through your head in those days? Do you remember that far back?
Well, let me see. Pull up my 8-track player. And, I recall my student days quite vividly. It's for some reason, those 4 years of high school in particular, I don't think anyone really forgets those years. They really shape who you are. Many of us still have friends from our high school days and so forth. To be honest, though, and I have 2 sons. One's in his first year of university taking economics. He's 19, and my youngest is 17 in grade 11 in the Louis Riel School Division, I might add. And you might bristle at this, but my advice to them is survive high school, right? Because it can be a very challenging time for people trying to find who they are, trying to make sense of the world. There's so much pressure, okay, you're going to go on to post-secondary. What are you going to do? And, you go from middle school where it's like friends and and studying to all of a sudden you start getting closer to the real world of adult decisions and adult consequences. So, I just, my advice to them was survive high school. But overall, yeah, I remember my experience just trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do? Because back then, I think there was, there's still a lot of discussion around careers, but like the experience of myself and my friends, it was almost like by the time you graduated, you had to have your life figured out.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, that's different
there is
today,
no,
though. That's
yeah,
different today. Do you feel that?
oh, absolutely,
Because we used to
absolutely.
get Chamber of Commerce missives back in those days when you were still in the pew uh, going to school, quite literally, because you went to a Catholic school. But,
Yep.
in those days, when you talk about survival, it was also a lot of fun, though, right?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, those were the
absolutely.
days. Like, do you tell when you get together with your buddies, you're rehashing those stories? That's how important and formative those years are. There's a lot of stories we don't rehash, but those are the ones you rehash, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, again, you think, high school, for all it's good, all it's bad, and all it's in between, really shapes who we become. I mean, those are key formative years. And but you look back, and even some of the things at the time where you're like, oh, this is horrendous, this is the end of the world. You look back now with almost fond memories and kind of smile and laugh about it. And actually, it's a great lesson for me because I remind my kids, hey, whatever the biggest issue you think you're dealing with today, no, if I asked you what was the biggest issue a year ago, you don't remember. So, that's the experience of high school.
Yeah, it doesn't pull you into the muck of house payments and finance in your life and those kinds of things. I remember, I'm going to give you a little insight about what I remember about you as a kid. All right,
Oh,
here
Lord
it
help
goes.
us.
This is going to be good because you were the kind of kid who could talk. Now that's been your great skill. You are a talker. You are a presenter. Whenever I go to a chamber event, I get a tingle of pride every time you go up there because I see you as an accomplished speaker and presenter up there. So kudos to you on that. Like you've continued to develop that skill. When you talk about it as a foundation piece in high school, I always saw that in you. I always saw those pieces. You were the kind of kid though, if I gave you an 85% on a writing piece, you'd want to know why you didn't get 86. And you would argue with me at a table. And because I was a young teacher too, and I was a yapper and you were a yapper, we would go at it. Do you remember some of those? Like you wanted your mark all the time. Give me this half mark. How come Schmegley here got this half mark and I didn't? I want to know exactly why and give me the points and spell it out. So every time I see you talk to the province about their agenda and how well they're accomplishing their agenda, I can't help think that you're kind of quietly asking them for, I want that half mark. Give
Yeah,
me that half mark because that's the stuff I want. So I remember that about you. Do you remember that? And you were into politics then. Do you remember that?
absolutely.
What did you
No,
do in high school? Like talk about those times because I remember you vividly do in this context.
you know what's interesting though is how you shift the thinking because you're right. Back then, it was I had to make sure I had straight A's, and if I got 95, why didn't I get 97,
I,
98?
I said
And those
85.
kind of
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
well,
Sorry about
I
that.
remember it differently.
That's
But
what you tell your
you know,
kids anyway.
and it's actually only later in life that I realized. And I'll share a story with you. I did a presentation early in taking on this role. I was invited to speak to what I thought was just going to be the leadership class of Balmoral Hall. And I showed up, and it turns out I was speaking to the entire school. So I've never felt more terrified in my life. And I'm serious about that because I
You
felt this whole
in this context, you felt terrified speaking to a school?
a school of young women because I felt like this overwhelming. Like I tend to be a little informal. I don't take myself too seriously, but I felt like there was this weight. Like I couldn't just joke my way through this or be kind of glib or anything like that. Especially after I spoke with one of the teachers, and my whole message was about failure, and I emphasized. I said, look. we all have expectations that we put on ourselves, that our families have of us. And that can make failure seem like it's the end of the world. But I am standing before you today to tell you I am the product of repeated, numerous failures. And each one has made me a better person. And that ultimately, in my mind, the only failure is not learning from it. And so it's interesting when you bring up that, fighting for that extra point. One of the things I've stressed to my kids is that I don't worry about the grades. Like, yes, I want you to get good grades, but I want you to learn, because what's most important is the education and the learning. Whether you get 87 or 81 or 75, 75 is kind of my cutoff.
So what happens when one of your kids only gets 74? What happens at the house?
I haven't encountered that yet.
Oh, okay. So, all right. I hope this happens, and we'll have another podcast when Tiger Dad figures out that this shall not.
But it does. But it speaks to, I think, the evolving view of education, and even as a parent, is you want the best for your students, your children, and yeah, grades are important. But let's be honest, like, acquire the information, acquire the education. That will serve you better. What would you rather have? Straight A's, but you don't understand the material? Or you have a 70, but you really know the material? Like, what's going to serve you better in life when it comes to your career? You can only fake it so long before someone calls you and says, do you understand this? Do you get it?
But learning's changed a lot there, Loren, right? Like learning's like when you were in the business, when I was in the business of being a student, when I was in the business of being a student, even teaching, it was really about, can you regurgitate that stuff? Can you give it back to me? Oh, you've got an opinion? Okay. That's okay, I guess. But now with the ubiquitous cell phone and content just flowing around you, learning's changed a ton. Now, what do you think's good about this?
Can I speak to an example of that? Can I just?
Yes.
Here's a great example. Richard Wassman, brother Richard Wassman.
Oh, I know.
You want to talk about regurgitation? To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it's nobler in the mind
to suffer the slings and arrows, outrageous fortune, is to take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing in them.
Had to memorize that, and that was 30 some years ago.
I know, but did that hurt you? Remember. Did it hurt you to do that?
Well, it hurts people to hear me recite it.
No, it doesn't. It makes my heart sing when you recite that. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle. Life's but a poor player, a walking shadow that struts and frets its hour upon the stage. And then it's
you realize
no more.
We just lost all the listeners at this point.
It's a tale full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Right on. Like those things, there's a certain magic in that stuff and beauty in the poetry. It's all poetry, right? So you don't like the memorization stuff at all? Or do you think there has to be a balance?
Oh, no.
What do you think's wrong with school today, or what do you think's right with school today?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
It's a loaded one. So you're also the CEO and president of the Chamber of Commerce. You could be influencing policy agenda even as we speak.
Oh geez, I had an answer, now I just drew a blank. I honestly, I think one of the things we're pushing for, and I do see it, like, because when we were going through school, and Adriano, you'll remember, you're right out of the Faculty of Education.
Yep.
It seemed like there was really two tracks kids were encouraged to go at. One was go to post-secondary, university, do your liberal arts education, become a doctor, lawyer, whatever. If you couldn't do that, go to trades. And that was it. Those were the two tracks. And the one thing that's frustrating, and not just in my current role, but just as a parent, is what about the third track? And there's probably more, but the third track of entrepreneurship. Like, there's this idea that, in either scenario, generally you're working for someone else. Well, as we've seen more and more, like, I tour startup, Innovation Alley in the Exchange District, and I see kids, and I say kids because literally they're still in high school, but they're operating their business out of space at Innovation Alley. And it reminds me that there is an amazing depth of entrepreneurialism in this province at a very young age. And we as a community have to do a much better job of encouraging, activating that entrepreneurial spirit, but validating it as equal in terms of its value to our society as someone that pursues a liberal arts education or a science designation or goes into the trades. Like
Yes,
there is
yes.
not, we need people to start businesses. And that's where I think the school system can put more emphasis on saying, hey, owning a business, that's a pretty good thing.
Well, I agree with you. Like I run a Tiger's Den and lots of entrepreneurial. Like Lou Riel's got the largest contingent of JA students anywhere, and we run our Tiger's Den. We do pieces. I agree with you. I've been trying to run that for 20 years, but it's a tough slog. It's a hard sell because it is off the beaten path. Now, Gen Z, Isabella's Gen Z, these guys seem to have a certain affinity for this kind of thinking. Do you want to talk about Isabella for a second?
Sure. I think it's really interesting, like you talked about this heart for entrepreneurship that is so early on instilled in these students, and I definitely see it, especially with like my brother. He is like in high school right now, in grade 10, and he just opened his own business and his own app. And I just see how a lot of people nowadays don't really put themselves inside a box. I remembered in high school when I was like in the last few years of high school, one of my classmates, he ended up, opening his own clothing line. And I think this is really interesting because we are starting to, push off this sense of going to a university and just going in this traditional path. I think you can just open doors for yourself in your own way as well, like you don't necessarily have to be an adult to open your own business or make your idea possible.
Yeah, the internet's changed things a lot, right? So I mean, you can set up companies, between Shopify and just, GoDaddy. You can set up your own spaces. But it also seems, now you can agree or disagree, but there seems to be going back in time to Ben Franklin, where kids are becoming more artisanal, they're more creative, they're more building their pieces, right? So as much as we think we're moving forward, we're really going back to a time when it was expected that young people by 13, 14, 15 were developing a trade and they were becoming artisans. So we seem to be moving in that. What do you think of that, Loren?
You know what? Time will tell. I mean, I think everything, given enough time, it's what's new is, or what's old is new again. Um, Cycles come, cycles go. Um, One of the things that I am hearing from more and more employers, I want to share this. I
Right on.
participated in a national discussion, and it featured the head of Google Canada and the head of George Brown College in Ontario and some others, and really just talking about the future of work, in particular post-COVID, the focus on reskilling, upskilling, and it's just fascinating. And, as a graduate from the liberal arts and the humanities, it was interesting because when I was going through school, there was such a focus on very specific skills, right? Like you get an expertise, a skill set,
Yes, yes.
and you apply that and you move forward. And now you're hearing more and more from employers, the value of a liberal arts education. We need creative thinkers. I need a plumber that doesn't just know how this all works and fits, but can see things differently other than what's in a manual or what tells you need to do. I need that person that sees opportunity and the challenges and really can envision and be creative. But as well, there is more and more from employers I'm hearing and seeing is a focus on the general skill sets. We used to call them soft skills, but it's really, the interpersonal communication skills, the emotional skills, emotional intelligence. Um, Even if you're a coder where you would think that it's very much skill set, knowledge based experience, you still that greater focus on skills that are very general, that are that can be applied in numerous settings outside of your particular field of expertise.
Yeah,
Um,
they give you the ability to be interdisciplinary, right? So you can work on a
yeah.
project team and not just have one skill set. You can add value to the team in a variety of ways. Isabella, what were you thinking?
Yeah, like what you just said is something really interesting because other guests that we had on the show that just, went to university right now,
That are actual students.
yeah, there are actual students are saying the same thing, that we usually think about students being good at, for example, the humanities or just good at math and sciences. But it's good when we can see like students that can do both. And I just wanted to know from you, were you good in both areas when you were a student? If not, like how did that like reflect in you later throughout your career path?
Well, you had to watch your wallet around this guy. He was a very interesting guy.
Was like, you know what? I think I've always felt that, how do I say this without it sounding weird? But, I guess I recognized I had a certain level of emotional intelligence that when
Yeah, you
I
did.
started down my path into university, I wanted to get into psychology because, you know, I was in the friend zone quite often in high school because I was always the guy that people would come to tell, oh, I'm having my problem with my girlfriend, boyfriend, and so stuck in the friend zone and always giving advice and listening and so forth. At the time, I guess I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now. Um, but so yeah, I think that always had a blend of that. You know what? I do want to say one thing too in terms of why these kind of skill sets are so important. And it doesn't just necessarily speak to someone embarking on the first stages of their career, but you really do need to look at it from the multiple phases of your career. And I like to believe that a lot of people, they start off their careers wherever they start. They're not necessarily thrust into a leadership position right away, but most aspire to leadership positions. And this is very important. You don't manage people, you manage process, you manage things. And you lead people. So here's a great example. Would you say I lead the coffee maker? No. You manage the operation of the coffee maker to make coffee. It's a process, it's a thing.
Yes.
But you lead people. So when we think of leadership, people need to understand you could be the best coder in the company, or you
Yes.
could be the best chemist, but that's not going to make you an effective leader. That's going to make you a subject matter expert. But when you're in a leadership position, it is about leading people, and it's those skills we talked about, those interpersonal, the communication, the emotional intelligence. That is what's going to make you successful, and why it's so important early in your career to identify I need those skills and I need to nurture those skills because those are the ones that are going to drive my leadership aspirations as much as any kind of subject matter expertise.
Well, for sure. And you know what I recall about you as well is you were so entertaining during the presentation.
Are
And
you sure you have the same person, Adriano? Because
that's right. No, you know what? I'm going back in time. I'm one of these guys who really thinks back. I write short stories about my days in the '70s, and when I was growing up, it was all fun. So I remember, like, and we were both in a Catholic. You were in a Catholic school. I was teaching in a Catholic school, and you got a good education whether you liked it or not. And there was no if or buts in that kind of environment. It was very academic, very disciplined. Did you see that? Like the there's a bit of a rigidity there. What do you think about schools? Are they too lax? Could they be a little more rigid? What do you think? Like what would be the best? What do you want for your kids, your own kids? Because you got a couple of them now, and now you got to play. Now you got to play the role of dad/teacher with them.
Um, you know, it's funny. I would argue, and I mean no disrespect by this. I don't think your age determines whether you're old or not. It's when you stop learning, when you stop accepting change, and when you
Sure,
just go, "That's it. I liked it the way it was," and this new fangled way. God, just using that word, right?
I like
That's
that.
when you know you've kind of hit that stage of I'm older. Um, I look back actually, and I agree. It was very rigid in the sense of the expectation. I still remember our school motto, Adriano. It was, I am a gifted individual willing
Willing to contribute to a caring community. I remember that.
that was beaten into you. And there was a, you know, I
I
remember
actually
one of
saw
my
that.
first,
You know what's funny about that?
yeah,
Riel School Division has adopted one, and part of that motto is in the new Riel one. I went,
oh,
because
good.
it was stunning to me about just, I'm a caring individual willing to contribute to it. I'm a gifted individual willing to contribute to a caring community. I thought, oh my gosh, that's what they had in the 80s at this. I remember going to the retreat where we created that. I remember it vividly. Where as a staff, we created that and we hashed that out. Like every word, you know, when you're making a motto or a vision or value statements, every word has economical value. So you have to choose the word very carefully, right?
Well, and it, for, you know, it's, if it's validation, it did shape my perspective on many things. It's like I can do anything, but a life lived in service to others is a life lived well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that has shaped my career. Everything I have done has always been with a view. I want to look back on my career and say it served a greater purpose than just the paycheck. I can look back with pride and saying I made a difference to people. And maybe they don't know that. Maybe they have no concept of the work that I did and the influence that it had and the positive impact. That's okay. Just knowing that, you know, and actually it was through my high school that I won't give you the context because it's a long story, but basically the teacher at the time said, look, if you could stop the world right now and measure it quantitatively, the amount of goodness in the world, and it's, you know, 1 centimeter, and you do something that makes a difference in a child's life or an impoverished family's life or someone struggling with mental health issues. And for that one day, they don't know that hardship because of your influence. Haven't you made the world a better place by an extra couple millimeters? Like that was transformative for me. So to go back to the original question of like the rigidity, yeah, you know, from a academic perspective, it was very much you will learn. I remember our principal coming in saying, you know, here's the bar. Everyone rises to the bar. We don't lower the bar for anyone. And that really stuck with me. So it was very much, we're going to teach you whether you want to or not.
That's right. You'll
And,
learn
and you
whether
will
you want
learn
to or
this
not.
and you will
Yeah.
rise. But at the same time, and I'm so very thankful for my high school, St. Boniface Dawson, in that we also had a very dynamic drama program. And it was Mr. Bohemier in Holy Cross, but the two schools together. And it was such a nice balance because you
So
had
you were
this
a drama guy
rigidity.
too. You were a drama guy.
Absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
I was doing the drama for the first 5 years I was there. And then when I
Yep,
left, you weren't finished. And so I was doing all the drama pieces before then. I
yep.
remember that.
No, and it was just so nice because you had schooling that was very, you know, 9 to 5 rigid, but the drama program really allowed us to explore our creative side, validated that that was a good part of learning, um,
Yes,
and a
yes.
needed part of learning. And so I actually think the person I am today and the value I place on innovation and creativity, not just because of the business imperative, but because of my experience at high school, um, it really helped propel that value that I have for those that can think creatively.
And you know what? I agree with you 100%. I mean, I was in drama in my high school when I went into university, was in the Black Hole Theater Company. And
Oh yeah.
I credit those experiences with bringing me out of just my ordinary little shell because you had to explore, you had to figure out, you had to improvise, you had to create all the time. My feeling is, I always say to students, I try to do it with my kids. One of my kids wasn't into it though. I said every kid, and I've told educators too, every kid should be taking drama and art.
Mm-hmm.
Every kid, because those are the pieces that make you a better player, make you a better English student, make you a better scientist. All those pieces turn you into something extra special. It's very interdisciplinary.
Mm-hmm.
Isabella, what do
It's
you think of
also a
those?
safe space. Sorry, it's also a safe space in
Yes.
the sense that it allows us to come out and explore elements of our personality and who we are because you're acting. And it just, yeah, I find it to be an incredibly safe space, nurturing. And actually, one of my fondest memories of high school was um, the drama program. Sorry, Isabella, I jumped in.
Yeah, but that's okay because
No, for
no,
sure.
that's a that's a great point, because high school is the safe place to try things. And that's why in all of my career and all the programs that I've created, it was always throw a kid into a frying pan with support. And then they can test themselves, engage themselves, and they take, and they can step 1 foot out of their comfort zone. And the more they step by step out of their comfort zone, they begin to realize some great potential in themselves to make larger strides. And I've seen so many kids take off like that. Isabella, go ahead. Sorry, we're just cutting you off left and right here.
No, no, it's so interesting to hear your perspectives as well, because I was a drama kid too. I wasn't the greatest actress, I've got to say that, but I loved participating in the drama productions. And I think it's also because I grew up dancing ballet. So performances was just something that I could definitely express myself in a way that was safe, and I think it definitely helps you to gain confidence on who you are. And I definitely do think that students should all take some arts of some sort, whether it's through dancing, whether it's drama or art class even. I think it's great for you to really express your feelings as well as express your thoughts and emotions in a way that it's true to yourself. I feel like a lot of people are trying to live up to expectations of other people, but if you are in, for example, the arts, you're expressing it because it's yours and because you feel like this is who you are. And I think we should also, obviously, we should go through expectations and be like good professionals, but at the same time, we have to bring a little bit of ourselves into each project that we're in.
Hey, right on.
And also, I'll say this, like, again, for those that are listening, think about your career. Like, there's those that, I worked for the federal government for 10 years, and I'll use this as an example. There was a lot of value, and I'm not diminishing anyone in the federal government. I absolutely enjoyed my time, and I worked with many incredible women and men that were committed and innovative and so forth. But the system itself in a bureaucracy does not value innovation and creativity. It values turning the wheel, doing what your job is, so that enables someone else to do theirs, and the system continues. So, but in the private sector and other sectors, where you really see the ones that their careers are growing are the ones that can see opportunity beyond just the here and the now. And that requires that creative energy. And so that's where I'm saying, like, it's going to help you in your leadership aspects. But really, our entire economy is being built, and has been, I would argue, over the last couple decades. It's all coming around intellectual property and creative and innovation, and that is the economy of now and into the future. So drama and arts, I think, plays into that, and that's why, as a chamber, we are actually pushing not STEM studies, but STEAM. You need to add the arts to that.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, so tell us about your educational background. You left the Die High as a cum laude, I'm sure. Then, then you went off into university and such. Where did you go? What did you do?
I went to the University of Manitoba through St. Paul's College. It's where all the kids from St. Paul, St. Mary's, St. Boniface.
And it was it had a great cafeteria.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
The cafeteria. Great pizza and fries.
That's right.
I still remember that quite well. But actually, it was, now here's an example of how powerful arts is. When I was in grade 8, we read The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. And then Gerald Bohemier, who was our teacher at the time, made us do a mock trial. And I played the defense attorney. And I won't bore you with all the details, but kind of went through the whole process. And at the end, they called a surprise witness against my client, and I lost it. And I did the whole Perry Mason thing, and I got a part in the play because of it. And then because of that, I'm like, maybe I want to go into law school. Maybe I'd be a good lawyer, forgetting the fact it was a grade 8, project, and I think it takes more than just being able to wave your arms and freak out to be a good lawyer. Um, or maybe not, I don't know. So I actually went into university thinking I want to get into law school. And I started taking a lot of psychology classes. And then I kind of fell in love with psychology. So I entered honors psychology, did that for about a year, realized, nope, that's not for me. Got back onto the law train, and then realized, why do I want to be a lawyer? Because most politicians are lawyers. So maybe it's not that I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a politician. So I still stayed on the law track, but I picked up more political studies classes. At the last second, I graduated with my arts degree in psychology with a minor in political studies. Didn't get into law school, took a year to kind of figure out what I was going to do. And then I realized, no, I would be a terrible lawyer. And I embarked upon a master's degree in political studies, and graduated with a MA in political studies. And I still remember my dad at the time, who was an entrepreneur, owned his own store, a clothing store. And he said to me, he says, great, Loren, you've got a master's degree in political studies. You can BS better than most people, but what are you going to do with it? You know, because they were of that generation that says you get a degree that has a functional alignment with a career and that pays the bills. Like, you know, philosophy to my parents was great. You know, you can answer the question, do trees
But even
dream?
then with your MA, in those days, it would have been a city Winnipeg job, or it would have been a government job, because they valued a degree versus nothing, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was tough. I graduated in 95 with my master's. And the 90s was a brutal time. I mean, the economy was not doing well. Us poor Gen Xers, the forgotten generation, I just want to emphasize that again. You know, it's, it was tough times. You couldn't find work. I remember my first job was in Portage La Prairie, and I had to commute every day. It was tough grinding. And again, an MA in political studies didn't exactly, you know, you had 30 job offers. So that was kind of my trajectory. And then honestly, I really started getting into the association world, and it really began to marry nicely with my values and my belief in terms of I am a gifted individual willing to contribute to a caring community.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to look back and say I had a rewarding career that advanced something bigger than myself. It advanced a cause for an entire community. And honestly, like, this is my second, I call tour of duty through the chamber. I was head of the policy shop from 97 to 03, and then I went from 2003 to 2014 to the federal government, and I came back, and in 2016 I became the president. But it was always the lure of the chamber, and what honestly I believe with every fiber in my body, the chamber makes a difference in the lives of people in this community in ways that people might not be able to see. But every day, I don't care if I have the worst day, it's still a fulfilling day. And it's what motivates me. It's what motivates our staff. You can do anything in this world, but there is nothing more rewarding and powerful than knowing that you helped someone.
Well, that's pretty cool. Tell me, what's the function of a Chamber of Commerce? For Isabella here, what's the function of a Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, I would definitely like to know. I'm still trying to figure it out.
She doesn't know what you do.
You know, I remember when I first started working there, some of my friends, Chamber of Commerce, is that like the bank? And I'm like, no, it's not CIBC. And yeah, like for a lot of people here, Adriano, for your generation, it wasn't a question that.
And I apologize to the baby boomer for taking all the jobs, so the Gen Xers had nothing. I apologize for that, but let's continue.
A Chamber of Commerce is a business association, and it is a global association, but its strength is in its local community. So they are defined by geographic. So we are the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. We represent business in Winnipeg. It is a membership-based organization. And really, we serve three main functions. We're here to advocate for business. So Recently, the provincial government finally got rid of the final restrictions on Sunday shopping so that retailers could set their own hours for Sunday. We've been at that since the 80s. So again, lobbying government, giving them proof that this would be good for the economy, it'd be good for business growth, it would be good for consumers. So that's one main role a chamber plays, is to represent and push for changes that would be beneficial to business. Second is providing business programs and support to help businesses grow. So a lot of business is done by getting to know other business, networking, coming to an event, running into someone, and next thing you know, you're developing a partnership, or maybe they
Yes.
become a client of yours.
That's an
That is
enormous
one of the
piece. That's enormous.
that is one of the biggest reasons people join the chamber. It's why our events, for example, are State of the City and State of the Province. We have 1,300 business people come out to the convention center. It is one of those business events where, with the University of Manitoba International Distinguished Entrepreneur Award, like there are some events that as business people, you're like, I just go to that one. I have to. It's where everyone is. So that's a big part. And also, cost saving programs, things that can help you save money in your business, from insurance to, yes, paper supplies and office supplies. And then the last one I don't think we get enough credit for. I'll give you an example. Chamber was founded in 1873, March 8th to be exact. We are turning up 150 years old soon. But we have been here since the founding of this city.
Yes.
And we have been an instrumental part in building the very pillars and the foundation of this city. And one of our big aspects to complement, the advocacy, one, business support, two, third is community leadership. A lot of people don't know in 1965 it was the Chamber in partnership with the Winnipeg Labor Council that formed the United Way of Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
Because business leaders came and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a better way that we can support these necessary and vital organizations in our community in a more coordinated fashion. And then, I also credit to the government. So it was a three-way partnership. Winnipeg Crime Stoppers, founded by the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. The Winnipeg Winter Wonderland. Not a lot of people know this, but it was actually one of our volunteers back in the 90s that had seen it somewhere else and came back to us and said, no, we should do something like that here in Winnipeg. We are a winter city. And so we pulled people together. Next thing you know, we have Winnipeg Winter Wonderland. So there's a lot of initiatives that we undertake in this community that aren't necessarily business related. They're just for the good of the community. Because, and this is the real strength of the chamber, there is a unanimous agreement. A business community is only as strong as the community in which it exists. You cannot have a prosperous business community when you have a floundering community at large. It just doesn't work. And vice versa. You can't have a strong community overall without a strong business community. So, our members are leading organizations, volunteering. My predecessor, Dave Angus, good friend, lifelong mentor, he was chair of the United Way campaign.
Great man, yep.
Absolutely phenomenal. And, our members are out there doing amazing work behind the scenes, up front, because they love this community. It's their home. I always find it, can I just say one thing on that? It really bugs me when people slam Winnipeg. We're like any other city. We've got challenges. There's things that annoy us.
Especially hockey players.
Yeah. And I told my kids, I said, never let someone insult where you're from. And this is why. I said, you are a function. Who you are today is a function of two things, nature and nurture. Yes, your genetics, your mother and I, yeah, that's half of who you are. Half of who you are is the environment you grew up in.
Absolutely.
So if you allow someone to insult the environment you grew up in, it's like they're insulting half of who you are. You're a Winnipegger. And all that's good about you, half of that's because of the city you were born in and the city you were raised in, the community that nurtured it. It drives me nuts that we allow people to do that. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of your city, because they are one and the same.
Well, I say to you that psychology degree is coming pretty handy. Well done. And I got to tell you, Isabel asked a simple question. got a pretty good answer, and I think, okay, I'll give you the half mark. Don't worry about it. I've had enough of it. That's done. You get it, man. That was fantastic. You
Sorry.
get it.
As,
Hey,
as you said at the beginning, I like to talk.
and I, as I said at the beginning, that's your gift, and that's something you bring to the table that's super special. Your ability to work with an audience. When you said you're informal about it, I think you just hit the right notes when you talk to groups. You're very, very good. I love when you do an interview. Good stuff. Anyway, you know what? We're coming to the end of this. I'm getting a little bug in my ear saying, boy, this guy can talk. And I went, well, that's his gift,
Yep.
man. This is awesome. And you know what,
It's a
Loren,
two-part series.
I know. And you know what? And I so appreciate you being here. I so appreciate that we messed up last time. This is our second crack at this. Our technology blew up last time, and it's working out well today. So I appreciate you being here. You are honestly your inspiration. I always say to you, I remember you well way back when. I remember who you were. We remember the comma class. We remember all those things that are special to us.
Wasn't going to bring up the comma.
We remember the Schmegley Award that we used to do. There's a lot more we could talk about, but that's for another time. Another time. So, hey, I appreciate you being here. And Isabella, do you have any parting comments?
Oh, I just really loved hearing you talk about like the Chamber of Commerce, and also, I mean, how you grew up and became who you are today. So that's really incredible, and I definitely think that our listeners will draw some inspiration from your experience.
Where'd you go, Isabella? She's awesome. Anyway, I appreciate you. Appreciate that you're in your basement, and appreciate that you took the time. So everybody, that is episode 13 of Adventures in Careerland with Loren Remillard. We will be ready for another final episode because we're going to 14, then we're taking a break, and then we're moving on to train another group of students, and we'll be back in another time. So, congratulations on a great production. Congratulations, Loren, on being a part of our team today. And that's it for Adventures in Careerland.